So good afternoon. This is Audrey Russo, President and CEO of the Pittsburgh Technology Council. Today, like many of our days, we just have amazing people that we get a chance to talk to, and today is no exception. In a moment, I will bring up Eliada Griffin-El. She is an Associate Professor of Management and Director of the Massey Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at Robert Morris University. When we get into some of the things she's done, I think you'll all be pretty blown away and proud, Pittsburgh proud. So I want to give a thanks to Huntington Bank. Huntington Bank has supported us through this series right from the onset, loving to take experiments with us. And who knew we'd almost be approaching a year of keeping the community connected and having a chance to just talk to incredible people who against all odds are doing amazing things. And also 40 by 80, that's the wholly owned subsidiary of the Pittsburgh Tech Council. And it is the longitude and latitude of Pittsburgh. So on that note, I'm going to tell everyone we've muted you. We've done that on purpose, and we have a chat. And the chat is for you to ask questions of our guest, not to sell you wares. That's not what today is about. It's all about our guest. So now I have the privilege of bringing up Doctor, because you deserve to be called Doctor after the work that you've been doing. So
thank you.
Dr. Eliada W. Griffin-El, and I will, if it's okay with you, refer to you as Eliada.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. So good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm elated. I'm like, let's go.
Well, there's so much to cover with you. There's so much to cover. I did a little bit of research and I was like, whoa, we have to pack this in. So what I always like to do, Eliada, is start with who is. So who is Eliada Griffin-El? Meaning, what has been her journey? What are some inflection points? Anything about her family? The continued connections that you've had to Pittsburgh? You know, the leadership of the Massey Center for Entrepreneurship. Those are just sort of my opening pieces. So where do you want to start? How do you want to start?
Anywhere you want to take us.
Okay.
I am on your train.
So let's talk about this. Give us a little bit about yourself. Where were you raised? Where did you go to college? How about we start with that?
Okay, that's great. That's always heartwarming stuff. So I am Eliada, and I am the daughter of immigrants. I am of Nigerian heritage, born in the good old state of Oklahoma, actually. So that is where my roots started. My parents arrived in the United States in the late 70s. My father was a graduate student at the University of Oklahoma, and from then became a really incredible academic, one of the first with a PhD in engineering physics, which is what drew me into the university world. We've always been a part of it growing up. Right. But then we moved to New Orleans, Louisiana, which is where I came of age. So, you know, NOLA, always a part of my heart. I have lifelong friends and family who are still there, and just learned the beauty of loyalty and friendships, deep resonating culture, being unapologetic with one's identity. And as the oldest of four of us all together, so I and my three younger siblings just really kind of grew up to appreciate what it means to kind of reconcile our different identities at once. The fact that we are proudly children of West Africa, yet at the same time also proudly American and then African American. And so this just variety in our identity really started to seal itself together as we were coming of age, and then Southern as we were coming of age in New Orleans. Right. And then, you know, years went on. My family eventually moved to Pittsburgh in 2000. But at that time, I was an undergrad at Yale University. So I went to Yale University for college. And that is where I met some of the most incredible people as friends, as well as educators who, you know, now we kind of link arms as this really, thank you, happy Mardi Gras, as this really powerful this cohort of women and men who are like really making moves in their fields. And so that's Yale University is kind of where I really started to explore what I love and what I have passion for. And one thing that really stood out is that I wanted to be part of a global conversation of change, but what that change looked like, I knew had to be people driven. And so my heart was drawn towards policy as a result of that. It was like, maybe the policy world is where we kind of change institutions and we reimagine like structures so that people are enabled to make change within it. And that is what then brought me to the Graduate School of Public and International Affairs at the University of Pittsburgh. So I got to GISVIA as a master's student in international development, not knowing fully what that was, but I was drawn to it. I felt as if I knew that it would draw me into a circle where people across the globe are asking the same pertinent questions about the world. And I knew that it would hold the integrity of human life at the core of how change should happen. And so, but it was in GISVIA under, the great tutelage of Dr. Louis Picard, where I then was able to access opportunities of research within the African continent, like full circle, concerning economic development. And that is where I saw the power of entrepreneurship. That was it. It was in those early days of being a young graduate student. I was 22, 23 years old in South Africa, visited again 25 in Senegal, but saw individuals make incredible novelty with what they had at hand. And it was what they were providing for their community that was starting to not only invoke the creativity and the value creation in others, but it was also starting to demand changes in legal systems and institutions so as to enable them. So I realized that's where the change is. It is invoked by people. So that's what took me on this journey of entrepreneurship, and I've been on it ever since.
So you have been at the helm of the Massey Center. Can you talk a little bit about what that means? What are the services? What are the programs or classes?
Sure. So the Massey Center was reinvigorated in 2016. We have an incredible dean of our business school, Dean Michelle Patrick, who restruck like a really great relationship with the Massey Charitable Trust. And I arrived at the same time where, as she was looking for a director, that's where she came and gave me a gentle nudge. And so at that time, the Massey Center, it had to be almost like reconfigured, like reimagined. And one of the first questions that we asked ourselves, that I asked myself, was, well, what's the DNA of RMU? Like, who is RMU? If RMU put its stamp on entrepreneurial action, what would that look like? And so after conversations with deans and different colleagues and students across the campus, it became very clear that RMU has a brimming innovative culture, but that takes place alongside a very strong brand and identity around professional prowess, that the students that are coming from RMU would be positioned to be effective thinkers and doers within their respective professions. And then alongside that is this third stream of identity of being really heartfelt. RMU is really kind of homegrown, humble persona. If RMU was like a person at a coffee shop, they would give you a big smile and then listen to all you have to say and then ask you questions later. Like, there's a really good heart of a campus. Believes in people and believes in taking care of people. So taking all these nuggets in, we thought that we could cultivate a center that helps to support individuals who are about action, and hence who are about entrepreneurial action, whether it be through their own venture, through founding a startup, or whether it be through the platform that their profession provides them. Because we believe that entrepreneurship is broadly a method, is an approach to life, but it's also an approach to cultivating very serious solutions for various serious problems. And so that's what the Massey Center has become. It's become this epicenter of innovative and entrepreneurial thinking on campus that helps to cultivate leadership in our students to be entrepreneurial, either through venture creation or through what we call workplace innovation. And it does this by providing a suite of co-curricular and extracurricular programming. We are constantly seeking and fostering relationships with across campus and across the region. So we also support our curricular bedrock of courses, which are fully committed to entrepreneurship, known as the Undergraduate Certificate in Entrepreneurship and Innovation. So yeah, we keep ourselves busy, and our students do too.
Are you seeing a demand? How are you seeing a demand for engagement in all of this?
Oh, I love this question. I love, because when we first got started, I think entrepreneurship, it wasn't a new conversation in general, but I think it was a new conversation when thinking about its position at the university. So, I'm also a full-time academic. I teach on average 100, about 100 students a semester. And when I would engage with my own students in the class of Entrepreneurship and Innovation, I would ask, especially Audrey, like 2016, 2017, I would ask them, say, so anyone with entrepreneurial ambitions, anyone want to, kind of start your own thing? And they would look at me, and in the beginning, it would be like the one slow hand that creeps up, and then they do the wave, because it's like, I'm not sure, but maybe sort of. And then they put their hand down. But then I would ask, okay, that's cool, that's fine. And if you have relatives, friends who are entrepreneurs, and at least like maybe 10 out of a class of 48 would raise their hand. I'm like, aha, so it's in our milieu, like it's around us, whether or not we're seeing ourselves take that on. So that was 2016, 2017. Now, what we have started to see is that usually midway through our different entrepreneurial curriculum, that attitude would shift. So where it was one person with like the unsure hand, now we'll see about a third of the class pop their hand up. What has been really cool is that we developed this certificate program, of which the capstone course is a lab, and we call it our Business Model Innovation Lab. Brand new course, just offered this semester. I expected, let me just own it. I expected like 10 or so students, true, just movers and shakers, gonna make it happen. We got 38, we got near 40. And that was, and we've just gotten started. It's only been year 2.5 of the program. So we're starting to see the momentum pick up. We have a new fellowship program committed to entrepreneurship that has 10 new fellows under the Rockwell name, the Rockwell Fellows, who are also leading that.
Tell us about the fellowship.
Sure. So the Rockwell Fellowship on Entrepreneurship and Innovation is funded by the S. Kent Rockwell Foundation. And it is brand spanking new, and it has been so much fun. Our students across campus are so incredible. Working with this first cohort of 10 students has been very promising as to what is just brimming on the campus. So the Rockwell Fellowship provides a selected cohort of students. We bring in 10 every year. So this is our first cohort of 10 with the curricular support through the certificate program, but then also very specialized and targeted support through networking, through prototyping resources, and through other kind of venture building resources that we could provide. We try our best to really kind of get them out there. Like, it's easy to sit in the classroom, but we want to get them out there and want them to meet people, want them to start to activate their ideas. And so we have we're right now we're going to soon start to recruit for our second cohort, which will start in the fall. And in addition, they're given a scholarship for 2 years.
Wow. So, a lot of things are going on at RMU, right? I mean, we heard about the scholarships via Netflix. There's just the athletic, growth there, just you name it. And the amount of innovation there is just, we wouldn't have time to cover it all. Do you, you've been in Pittsburgh now for how long?
Since we've come back, well, I'm a boomeranger. I boomerang. So as you know, I was here in Pittsburgh since 2002 initially, then finished up my doctoral program in 2010. My first academic position was actually overseas. So I was a professor at the University of Cape Town in Cape Town, South Africa for 6 years. So then in 2016, my family and I came back. So I've been back in Pittsburgh for this second round since 2016.
And so what do you think? What do you think from where you're sitting? Because the world that we live in and we talk about is innovation, tech, entrepreneurship,
right,
et cetera. So what do you see?
Well, I tell you this, Audrey. When I left in 2010,
yes,
and Pittsburgh was at the beginning of this, exploration of what its innovation identity could be. Again, always here, but I think it was simmering. I remember being a graduate student assistant for now Dean Sabina Dietrich, Associate Dean Sabina Dietrich at GISPIA. And at that time, she was doing research on the possibilities of the emerging like biotechnology and biomedical technology industry in the region. That was like 2008, 2009. Then I left and I came back and I said, what has happened? Like the conversation around the startup vigor was it was so thick. It was so, the pulse was high, like it was so energetic. And I said, this is awesome. Like I'd only been away for 6 years. And so to see what was happening around the different type of support organizations that had definitely like positioned themselves, to see the different circles and associations that were dedicated to entrepreneurs and startup founders, to see the strengthening of the programs across the universities, and then mid-size universities like RMU starting to move into that space even like more intentionally, to see it was incredible. And so I think that we have the pieces of the machine moving. And I think what I'm seeing is that there is more and more very mindful effort to make sure that those pieces of the machine are as seamless as possible together. So we have this, we use the word ecosystem all the time. As I always question, we want to make sure though that our ecosystem isn't needlessly crowded. And we also want to make sure that our ecosystem is integrated. We want to make sure that that flow of resources that is supposed to take place within or between the different actors that occupy the ecosystem isn't hindered, and that flow of resources and information can be accessed by those who have that vigor to build something. So I'm seeing folks in the middle of this who are asking those questions as we're building this Pittsburgh entrepreneurial environment. And that excites me. That really excites me.
There are a couple of like statements, and I think Nancy Washington started something and she didn't finish it. A recent McKinsey report shows that Black entrepreneurs. Do you know what, Nancy, if you want to complete that, Jonathan will grab it. The rest are just statements, right? No other questions.
We gotta know about this Pepe's thing. Come on.
I don't know anything about that. Do you, Eliada, about the pizza?
No, I don't think I know.
So
Okay.
What do you see are some of the biggest obstacles and challenges in innovation? And then Sarah, you should hear some of her research, because I think some of that are things that she's explored.
Okay. Well, some of the biggest challenges I think for innovation within the Pittsburgh environment, it kind of goes to where we were coming from with regards to this idea of this entrepreneurial environment, this entrepreneurial ecosystem. I come from a background of economic sociology. So the whole premise of that is that any economy is able to thrive and is able to internally interact as enabled by the status of society. And so if society is, harmonious, is integrated, then presumably the economy will be as well. And then also vice versa. I think I think what can be, and it's a challenge to Pittsburgh, is that true to form, it's both is, my husband will call it, it's a poetic flaw where you have, small communities that for long over generations have cultivated deep-seated relationships within themselves, and as a result are pretty airtight. Like, there's strength in that. Yet at the same time, when it comes to the connectedness between communities, we see very weak and sometimes fragile connectedness. So then therein lies the question: how do we build an economy that is truly cross-cutting and integrated when our society is still working towards that? I think that shows up with entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial resources when made available to folks who may not sit in the middle of the action. So, and they could be excluded based upon attributes of race, based upon attributes of gender, based upon even attributes of geographic positioning. So back to that question of this idea of an entrepreneurial environment where all actors and institutions and organizations and then the resources that flow between them, how do we make sure that they're available to Black entrepreneurs, to entrepreneurs of color, to immigrant entrepreneurs as well, to female entrepreneurs, to entrepreneurs who live outside of Pittsburgh? How do we make sure that that fluidity across this thing that we celebrate as this entrepreneurial ecosystem is as unhindered as possible?
Yeah, it's a great point. And you got to have a lot of care and feeding and a lot of candor and personal reflection and policy reflection to make sure that those things happen. So Nancy Washington gave another start. She said a recent McKinsey report shows that Black entrepreneurs are more likely to fail than others because of the combination of economics, marketing, sociocultural reasons. Have you seen any models that can change that narrative? And she apologized. She sent it to me and she apologized for the false start. It's okay, Nancy.
It's okay, Nancy. Have I seen any models that could change that narrative? I have seen examples, or I've seen work that I think is exciting. I'll take one internationally to start. So, Johannesburg, South Africa, where I spent a good part of the beginning of my career, it's race dynamic, kind of mirrors that of the United States with regards to historically institutionalized segregation and of Black people, and then also the hindrance or sometimes the blockage of their access to certain resources or certain platforms by which to make their work possible. And one particular organization that I appreciated, which I took my students to see, because we circled back to South Africa as RMU now in 2019. And I was able to take my students back to Johannesburg. And there they have what they call the River Sands Business Incubator. And this thing is the size of an entire campus. Quintessentially, at its core, what they recognized was that, one, sure, the foundational knowledge and the foundational skill sets are necessary. So yes, let there be training in marketing and accounting and leadership and, how to achieve and maintain financial viability and so on and so forth. But they made it a campus at large because what they also realized was that there was a need to create a physical community of entrepreneurship for entrepreneurs, for Black entrepreneurs, Black South African entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of color, where they not only have access to office or to workspace, like that is sizable. We're talking about not just like a small office, but a place that could actually hold a small production facility for each entrepreneur that's part of it. So now they have access to the space, they have access to the material, there's also the learning, and then they have access to each other. And because they realized that some of the hindrances when it came to Black entrepreneurs being able to move forward was the inability of accessing assets, the inability of accessing anything from a storefront to a particular type of high quality machinery that you need in order to ensure the high quality of your product, and how can those subtle hindrances or obstacles, how could those be addressed as well? Then, of course, the creation of the community by which there is a strengthening and a resilience creation by connecting to each other, but then also how they are able to find the people who will vouch, the individuals who will vouch and open doors and sponsor them when they are engaging with the market, because we know that the market is behavioral and it could be biased. And so they have found that that model has been helpful in helping to kind of respond to some of those very deeply embedded prejudices that kind of keep Black entrepreneurs from being able to thrive.
So, you know, I went and looked at some of these papers that you've written over the years, and the one that is very interesting to me, given what you're talking about, I'm going to read the title. It's Diasporic Synergies, Conceptualizing African-American Entrepreneurship Based Upon Translocal.
Yeah.
So what does that mean what does that really mean? You co-authored that.
Yes. So I co-authored that with my awesome colleague, Joy Olabisi, who's an associate professor at the Saunders School of Business, which is at the Rochester Institute for Technology. And there we were particularly looking at the power of the entrepreneurial power of the African diaspora, of the Black diaspora. So when we're, in entrepreneurship these days, so much we're celebrating the idea of the born globals, the businesses that are launched with the intention of being able to engage with international markets and doing it and achieving it. We're also, increasingly talking about the idea of our whole supply chain design, like how we're able to source maybe really useful or high quality inputs or material from different parts of the globe, by which we then, upvalue and produce in another part to then make it available to another region. And so that was particularly exploring the power of the connectedness between our African diaspora, people of African descent here in the United States, and the African continent, and then other communities of African descent in other parts of the world, including the Caribbean. And just examining the power of the flow, the flow of information. My research was a network. So the flow of information and resources between nodes that occupy, individuals or organizations that occupy the Black diaspora. And it was a conceptual paper. So what we were proposing was that there's a lot to be gleaned from local networks and transnational networks. So our local community of venture building with entrepreneurs, with fellow Black entrepreneurs, as well as entrepreneurs that are really interested in wanting to collaborate or wanting to join forces. But then there's also power in exploring relationships with entrepreneurial forces that are taking place in other parts of the globe as well, including the African continent. So, I have a great friend who I adore so much, and Pittsburgh adores her, Lakeisha Wolf, who runs Ujamaa, instrumental in the Ujamaa collective. And I think of her as a very incredible force when it comes to the idea of the translocal network.
That's great. So, you are really a blessing for us here in Pittsburgh. At Robert Morris, we're going to continue to pull you out a little bit, because we know that the work, we did the civic hackathon, and Eliada was a judge. Right? Yes. He was a judge, and you've embraced that in one of your classes, right?
I did. I thought about sending Kid a message like, "Hey, this was so great. I used it in my class." So we were talking about design thinking. It's a popular conversation amongst the entrepreneurial community, and has been for a while as an approach to innovation. And I raised the question of the COVID vaccine dissemination efforts. And I asked my students, of which several have elderly parents or grandparents, which they are thinking about, which they're trying to secure access to the vaccine for. I'm like, if any of you could offer, if any of you could offer an alternative way of doing this, what would that be? And from whose vantage point are you, whose vantage point are you considering when you think of this alternative way? So some students suggested, well, maybe it could be, there could be a more mobile effort where the vaccine can be brought to people's homes and administered in their homes for elderly who aren't able to get out. Maybe it is one of my, students pushed against the grain. He was like, well, maybe there's nothing wrong with the process. Maybe there needs to be an innovative effort to help to educate us so that we're more patient and our expectations are managed. I mean, the conversation was great. And so then I was like, well, here's the winner of the Civic Innovation Hackathon, who approached it from a scheduling and a kind of convening of information point. And I showed them their pitch from the competition. And my students were like, wow, if that works, that'd be really great. Like that would be really, really, really great. So yes, it's so great to be able to bring those experiences that I have and experiences that even other entrepreneurs have right into the classroom, especially for a conversation that's so now, it's so timely.
Well, we have spent 30 wonderful minutes with you. I tried to pack in as much as we could, and it's been thrilling to have this conversation. If people want to reach out to you, can they reach out on LinkedIn? Is that the best way, or through your website over at RMU?
Yeah, LinkedIn is great. Also, my email address through the university is very simple. It's Griffin-El, my last name, at rmu.edu. It comes straight to my computer, straight to my phone. Happy to engage with more and more thoughtful individuals from across the region and from across the world. RMU, it's picking up its momentum, and we have this growing community of energetic and forward-thinking students. We're looking to continue with that energy.
Well, I can't thank you enough. Just the fact that you have 100 students in a semester on top of everything else. I can't imagine how you keep up and with the family, but we're lucky to have you here in Pittsburgh. I really appreciate you taking the time with us, and you can find her. She's easy to find, and we're going to stay connected to you as well. So I want to thank you, Eliada, for taking the time with us today. And Jonathan, what do we have coming up?
So tomorrow we have James Julius from Visimo stopping by to talk about all things analytics. I mean, everything from vaccine distribution to debunking social media myths and everything in between. And we also have Teresa Huber stopping by on Thursday, and we're ending up the week with Congressman Lamb. So we've got a heck of a schedule in front of us, Audrey.
That's great. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Thank you so much, Eliada, for being a champion and for the work that you're doing. We will stay connected.
See you guys.
Thank you.